Hello and welcome to day 90 of the Not Alone Today chronological Bible reading plan. Today we'll be reading Psalm 54 and 1 Samuel chapter 26 to 30.
Psalm 54. To the choir master with stringed instruments, a maskil of David, when the Ziphites went and told Saul, "Is not David hiding among us?" From verse 1. O God, save me by your name, and vindicate me by your might. O God, hear my prayer, and give ear to the words of my mouth.
For strangers have risen against me, ruthless men seek my life. They do not set God before themselves.
Behold, God is my helper. The Lord is the upholder of my life. He will return the evil to my enemies. In your faithfulness, put an end to them.
With a free will offering, I will sacrifice to you. I will give thanks to your name, O Lord, for it is good. For he has delivered me from every trouble, and my eye has looked in triumph on my enemies.
1 Samuel chapter 26. Then the Ziphites came to Saul at Gibeah, saying, "Is not David hiding himself on the hill of Akilah, which is on the east of Jeshimon?" So Saul arose and went down to the wilderness of Ziph with 3,000 chosen men of Israel to seek David in the wilderness of Ziph. And Saul encamped on the hill of Akilah, which is beside the road on the east of Jeshimon. But David remained in the wilderness. When he saw that Saul came after him into the wilderness, David sent out spies and learned that Saul had indeed come. Then David rose and came to the place where Saul had encamped. And David saw the place where Saul lay, with Abner, the son of Ner, the commander of his army. Saul was lying within the encampment, while the army was encamped around him.
Then David said to Ahimelech the Hittite, and to Joab's brother Abishai, the son of Zeruiah, "Who will go down with me into the camp of Saul?" And Abishai said, "I will go down with you." So David and Abishai went to the army by night, and there lay Saul sleeping within the encampment, with his spear stuck to the ground at his head, and Abner and the army lay around him. Then Abishai said to David, "God has given your enemy into your hand this day. Now please let me pin him to the earth with one stroke of the spear, and I will not strike him twice." But David said to Abishai, "Do not destroy him, for who can put out his hand against the Lord's anointed and be guiltless?" And David said, "As the Lord lives, the Lord will strike him, or his day will come to die, or he will go down into battle and perish. The Lord forbids that I should put out my hand against the Lord's anointed. But take now the spear that is at his head and the jar of water, and let us go." So David took the spear and the jar of water from Saul's head, and they went away. No man saw it or knew it, nor did any awake, for they were all asleep, because a deep sleep from the Lord had fallen upon them.
Then David went over to the other side and stood far off on the top of the hill, with a great space between them. And David called to the army and to Abner, the son of Ner, saying, "Will you not answer, Abner?" Then Abner answered, "Who are you who calls to the king?" And David said to Abner, "Are you not the man who is like you in Israel? Why then have you not kept watch over your lord the king? For one of the people came in to destroy the king, your lord. This thing that you have done is not good. As the Lord lives, you deserve to die, because you have not kept watch over your lord, the Lord's anointed. And now see where the king's spear is, and the jar of water that was at his head."
Saul recognized David's voice and said, "Is this your voice, my son David?" And David said, "It is my voice, my lord, O king." And he said, "Why does my lord pursue after his servant? For what have I done? What evil is on my hands? Now therefore let my lord the king hear the words of his servant. If it is the Lord who has stirred you up against me, may he accept an offering. But if it is men, may they be cursed before the Lord, for they have driven me out this day, that I should have no share in the heritage of the Lord. saying, Go serve other gods. Now therefore, let not my blood fall to the earth away from the presence of the Lord. For the king of Israel has come out to seek a single flea, like one who hunts a partridge in the mountains.
Then Saul said, I have sinned. Return, my son David, for I will no more do you harm, because my life was precious in your eyes this day. Behold, I have acted foolishly, and I have made a great mistake. And David answered and said, Here is the spear, O king. Let one of the young men come over and take it. The Lord rewards every man for his righteousness and his faithfulness. For the Lord gave you into my hand today, and I would not put out my hand against the Lord's anointed. Behold, as your life was precious this day in my sight, so may my life be precious in the sight of the Lord, and may he deliver me out of all tribulation. Then Saul said to David, Blessed be you, my son David. You will do many things and will succeed in them. So David went his way, and Saul returned to his place.
Chapter 27. Then David said in his heart, Now I shall perish one day by the hand of Saul. There is nothing better for me than that I should escape to the land of the Philistines. Then Saul will despair of seeking me any longer within the borders of Israel, and I shall escape out of his hand. So David arose and went over, he and the 600 men who were with him, to Achish the son of Maosh, king of Gath. And David lived with Achish at Gath, he and his men, every man with his household, and David with his 2 wives, Ahinoam of Jezreel, and Abigail of Carmel, Nabal's widow. And when it was told Saul that David had fled to Gath, he no longer sought him.
Then David said to Achish, If I have found favor in your eyes, let a place be given me in one of the country towns, that I may dwell there. For why should your servant dwell in the royal city with you? So that day Achish gave him Ziklag. Therefore Ziklag has belonged to the kings of Judah to this day. And the number of the days that David lived in the country of the Philistines was 1 year and 4 months.
Now David and his men went up and made raids against Geshurites, the Gizites, and the Amalekites, for these were the inhabitants of the land from of old, as far as Shur to the land of Egypt. And David would strike the land, and would leave neither man nor woman alive, but would take away the sheep, the oxen, the donkeys, the camels, and the garments, and come back to Achish. When Achish asked, Where have you made a raid today? David would say, Against the Negeb of Judah, or against the Negeb of the Jerahmeelites, or against the Negeb of the Kenites. And David would leave neither man nor woman alive to bring news to Gath, thinking, lest they should tell about us and say, So David has done. Such was his custom all the while he lived in the country of the Philistines. And Achish trusted David, thinking, He has made himself an utter stench to his people Israel, therefore he shall always be my servant.
Chapter 28. In those days the Philistines gathered their forces for war to fight against Israel. And Achish said to David, Understand that you and your men are to go out with me in the army. David said to Achish, Very well, you shall know what your servant can do. And Achish said to David, Very well, I will make you my bodyguard for life.
Now Samuel had died, and all Israel had mourned for him, and buried him in Ramah, his own city. And Saul had put the mediums and the necromancers out of the land. The Philistines assembled and came and encamped at Shunem. And Saul gathered all Israel, and they encamped at Gilboa. When Saul saw the army of the Philistines, he was afraid, and his heart trembled greatly. And Saul inquired of the Lord. The Lord did not answer him, either by dreams, or by Urim, or by prophets. Then Saul said to his servants, Seek out for me a woman who is a medium, that I may go to her and inquire of her. And his servant said to him, Behold, there is a medium at Endor.
So Saul disguised himself and put on other garments and went, he and 2 men with him. And they came to the woman by night. And he said, Divine for me by a spirit, and bring up for me whomever I shall name to you. The woman said to him, Surely you know what Saul has done, how he has cut off the mediums and the necromancers from the land. Why then are you laying a trap for my life to bring about my death?" But Saul swore to her by the Lord, "As the Lord lives, no punishment shall come upon you for this thing." Then the woman said, "Whom shall I bring up for you?" He said, "Bring up Samuel for me." When the woman saw Samuel, she cried out with a loud voice. And the woman said to Saul, "Why have you deceived me? You are Saul." The king said to her, "Do not be afraid. What do you see?" And the woman said to Saul, "I see a god coming up out of the earth." He said to her, "What is his appearance?" And she said, "An old man is coming up and he is wrapped in a robe." And Saul knew that it was Samuel, and he bowed with his face to the ground and paid homage.
Then Samuel said to Saul, "Why have you disturbed me by bringing me up?" Saul answered, "I am in great distress, for the Philistines are warring against me, and God has turned away from me and answers me no more, either by prophets or by dreams. Therefore I have summoned you to tell me what I shall do." And Samuel said, "Why then do you ask me, since the Lord has turned from you and become your enemy? The Lord has done to you as he spoke by me. For the Lord has torn the kingdom out of your hand and given it to your neighbor David. Because you did not obey the voice of the Lord and did not carry out his fierce wrath against Amalek, therefore the Lord has done this thing to you this day. Moreover, the Lord will give Israel also with you into the hand of the Philistines, and tomorrow you and your sons shall be with me. The Lord will give the army of Israel also into the hand of the Philistines."
Then Saul fell at once, full length on the ground, filled with fear because of the words of Samuel. And there was no strength in him, for he had eaten nothing all day and all night. And the woman came to Saul, and when she saw that he was terrified, she said to him, "Behold, your servant has obeyed you. I have taken my life in my hand and have listened to what you have said to me. Now therefore, you also obey your servant. Let me set a morsel of bread before you, and eat, that you may have strength when you go on your way." He refused and said, "I will not eat." But his servants, together with the woman, urged him, and he listened to their words. So he arose from the earth and sat on the bed. Now the woman had a fattened calf in the house, and she quickly killed it, and she took flour and kneaded it, and baked unleavened bread of it, and she put it before Saul and his servants, and they ate. Then they arose and went away that night.
Chapter 29. Now the Philistines had gathered all their forces at Aphek, and the Israelites were encamped by the spring that is in Jezreel. As the lords of the Philistines were passing on by hundreds and by thousands, and David and his men were passing on in the rear with Achish, the commanders of the Philistines said, "What are these Hebrews doing here?" And Achish said to the commanders of the Philistines, "Is this not David, the servant of Saul, king of Israel, who has been with me now for days and for years? And since he deserted to me, I have found no fault in him to this day." But the commanders of the Philistines were angry with him. And the commanders of the Philistines said to him, "Send the man back, that he may return to the place to which you have assigned him. He shall not go down with us to battle, lest in the battle he become an adversary to us. For how could this fellow reconcile himself to his Lord? Would it not be with the heads of the men here? Is not this David of whom they sing to one another in dances? Saul has struck down his thousands, and David his 10,000s.
Then Achish called David and said to him, "As the Lord lives, you have been honest, and to me it seems right that you should march out and in with me in the campaign, for I have found nothing wrong in you from the day of your coming to me this day. Nevertheless, the Lords do not approve of you. So go back now and go peaceably, that you may not displease the lords of the Philistines." And David said to Achish, "But what have I done? What have you found in your servants from the day I entered your service until now, that I may not go and fight against the enemies of my lord the king?" And Achish answered David and said, "I know that you are as blameless in my sight as an angel of God. Nevertheless, the commanders of the Philistines have said, 'He shall not go up with us to the battle.' Now then, rise early in the morning with the servants of your Lord who came with you, and start early in the morning, and depart as soon as you have light." So David set out with his men early in the morning to return to the land of the Philistines. But the Philistines went up to Jezreel.
Chapter 30. Now when David and his men came to Ziklag on the third day, the Amalekites had made a raid against the Negeb and against Ziklag. They had overcome Ziklag and burned it with fire, and taken captive the women and all who were in it, both small and great. They killed no one, but carried them off and went their way. And when David and his men came to the city, they found it burned with fire, and their wives and sons and daughters taken captive. Then David and the people who were with him raised their voice and wept until they had no more strength to weep. David's two wives also had been taken captive, Ahinoam of Jezreel and Abigail the widow of Nabal of Carmel. And David was greatly distressed, for the people spoke of stoning him, because all the people were bitter in soul, each for his sons and daughters. But David strengthened himself in the Lord his God.
And David said to Abiathar the priest, the son of Ahimelech, "Bring me the ephod." So Abiathar brought the ephod to David. And David inquired of the Lord, "Shall I pursue after this band? Shall I overtake them?" He answered him, "Pursue, for you shall surely overtake and shall surely rescue." So David set out, and the 600 men who were with him, and they came to the brook Besor, where those who were left behind stayed. But David pursued, he and 400 men. 200 stayed behind, who were too exhausted to cross the brook Besor.
They found an Egyptian in the open country and brought him to David. And they gave him bread and he ate. They gave him water to drink, and they gave him a piece of cake of figs and 2 clusters of raisins. And when he had eaten, his spirit revived, for he had not eaten bread or drunk water for 3 days and 3 nights. And David said to him, "To whom do you belong? And where are you from?" He said, "I am a young man of Egypt, servant to an Amalekite, and my master left me behind because I fell sick 3 days ago. We had made a raid against the Negeb of the Cherethites, and against that which belongs to Judah, and against the Negeb of Caleb. And we burned Ziklag with fire." And David said to him, "Will you take me down to this band?" And he said, "Swear to me by God that you will not kill me or deliver me into the hands of my master, and I will take you down to this band."
And when he had taken him down, behold, they were spread abroad over all the land, eating and drinking and dancing, because of all the great spoil they had taken from the land of the Philistines and from the land of Judah. And David struck them down from twilight until the evening of the next day, and not a man of them escaped, except 400 young men who mounted camels and fled. David recovered all that the Amalekites had taken, and David rescued his 2 wives. Nothing was missing, whether small or great, sons or daughters, spoil or anything that had been taken. David brought back all. David also captured all the flocks and herds, and the people drove the livestock before him, and said, "This is David's spoil."
Then David came to the 200 men who had been too exhausted to follow David, and who had been left at the brook Besor. And they went out to meet David and to meet the people who were with him. And when David came near to the people, he greeted them. Then all the wicked and worthless fellows among the men who had gone with David said, "Because they did not go with us, we will not give them any of the spoils that we have recovered, except that each man may lead away his wife and children and depart." But David said, "You shall not do so, my brothers, with what the Lord has given us. He has preserved us and given into our hand the band that came against us. For as his share is, who goes down into the battle, so shall his share be, who stays by the baggage. They shall share alike." And he made it a statute and a rule for Israel from that day forward to this day.
When David came to Ziklag, he sent part of the spoil to his friends, the elders of Judah, saying, "Here is a present for you from the spoil of the enemies of the Lord." It was for those in Bethel, in Ramoth of the Negeb, in Jatir, in Aroah, in Shipmoth, in Eshtemoa, in Rakal, in the cities of the Jerahmeelites, in the cities of the Kenites, in Hormah, in Bor Ashan, in Atach, in Hebron, for all the places where David and his men had roamed. This is the word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
Today we've read 6 chapters, beginning with Psalm 54, which is a psalm that David wrote in the context of when the Ziphites went and told Saul, "Is not David hiding among us?" Very short psalm, but it's more a prayer to God. 1 Samuel chapter 26, which we read next, then details the context for which the preceding psalm was. This was when the Ziphites indeed came to Saul to expose David. And again, God gave David the opportunity to be very close to Saul in his camp, so much so that he took his water jug and a spear and then called for him. Of course, we were told that this is because a deep sleep from the Lord had fallen upon the people. In chapter 27, David flees to the Philistines, to King Achish, and David used the opportunity of being in the safety of the Philistines to mount secret raids to some of the old enemies of God in various territories. But he comes back and lies to the Philistine king, to King Achish, about these raids. In chapter 28, we're told about how Saul could no longer get any word from the Lord, not even from dreams or revelations, and not even from prophets. So much so that he had to consult a witch, the same sort of people that he had banned from operating in the land. He consulted the witch of Endor and asked her to summon Samuel's ghost, which she did by a curious narrative. And Samuel spoke to Saul to confirm to him the impending judgment of the Lord, even that he will die the very next day with his sons, and they will also join him in the Sheol. In chapter 29, we were told of how the Philistines rejected David. They were going to go for battle, but the commanders of the Philistines were angry with Achish for even thinking of bringing David along to that battle, for they feared that David might get to the battle and become their enemy rather than an ally. And finally, in 1 Samuel 30, David, having been told to return from going to the battle with the Philistines, came back to the territory that he was given in Ziklag, only to find that everything had been burnt down, and his wife and children and all the wives and children of the soldiers had been taken captive. They inquired of the Lord, went after them, and recovered all. And those are the 6 chapters we have considered. So let's go back to Psalm 54. What stood out to you?
Verse 6.
Okay.
Regarding free will offering, David said he would offer a free will offering to God and give thanks to his name for the deliverance he has brought.
Yeah, the ending part of that verse 6 says, "I'll give thanks to your name, O Lord, for it is good." And it seems almost as though that very name of the Lord has a role to play in the salvation that is given, because verse 1, the very first line says, "O God, save me by your name and vindicate me by your might." And the interesting thing is, as new covenant believers, we actually do have this name. We identify with this name. We are named by this name. We are called Christians because we are in him, and that name is available to us. Not just in the sense of Yahweh, the unpronounceable name of the Lord, as the Hebrews would say, but indeed in all of the various expressions of the names of God. And as African Christians, we give God loads of names, and in those names are captured testimonies of salvation in all of its various colors. 1 Samuel 26.
Part that stood out to me was verse 9.
Okay.
When David said, "Who can put out his hand against the Lord's anointed and be guiltless?" And it reads to me in practice that we should be mindful of the things we say about the Lord's anointed. While it's true that Saul was pursuing David aimlessly, David on 2 occasions had stopped himself from hurting Saul or taking revenge against him, knowing that the Lord would do it himself. And that should be our position, basically. When we see something that is not right, I don't think it's up to us to take up the charge and want to correct it, especially when it comes to the Lord's anointed. There might be structures around us where we can maybe make complaint or try to resolve issues. But in this new craze of cancel culture, there is this boldness that we can just cancel anyone regardless of whether they're anointed by God or not. If someone ceases to give us pleasure, or if they cease to match up with what we're expecting from them, we're very quick to go on our social media handles and just give a piece of our minds. But the thing is, we did not anoint these ones, especially if they're ministers of God. And it is very easy for us to throw the first stone, thinking that, we can never do that. We hear of cases of abuse and we think, that is too much. But the thing is, we are humans as these people are. And this abuse blight does not just jump on people. It starts subtly. It might be their background or where they're coming from. I'm not excusing them. I'm just saying, when we hear of this news about men of God doing X, Y, Z, that it's not appropriate.
Or women of God.
Or women of God doing things that are not appropriate. Our response should be praying for them, asking God to bring justice. But we should refrain unless we are led specifically. But I think it would be wise to refrain from putting out our hand against the Lord's anointed. Because as David said, if we do so, we would not be guiltless. We will be guilty.
Indeed. And that's the same verse I highlighted as well to reflect on, and you've said it beautifully. But one thing to just add is we are quick to also say, yes, all of us are the anointed of God. We are now in the new covenant. But the fact still remains that within the various structures and expressions of the body of Christ, especially in terms of local congregations, denominations, etc., the Lord does anoint people into offices and responsibilities and roles. And we must respect that in how we, especially in terms of how we relate with them. And David modeled that very brilliantly. Chapter 27, what stood out to me was verse 8. Now David and his men went up and made raids against the Geshurites, the Gerzites, the Amalekites, for these were the inhabitants of the land from of old, as far as Shur to the land of Egypt. It's almost like David was continuing to do the assignment of possessing the land, which was supposed to have been one of the primary responsibilities anyways of the king. So in Saul being obsessed with capturing David, he has left his primary assignment undone. And here is David hiding in enemy territory, and yet going on all these secret raids and coming back to lie to his host to say, oh no, I'm beginning to fight against my people, when in fact he's actually going and raiding all these enemy territories and taking possession of the land, as should have been the case anyways with Saul. So I just found that interesting.
When I read chapter 27, I got that perspective, but I was more concerned why David would go hide in the enemy's camp. So much that in chapter 28, he said he was going to go out against his brothers. That is concerning.
Yeah, but I think it's all tactics.
It doesn't say though.
It doesn't say, but there is a constant thread of God working in all sorts of unconventional ways, I would say, in the story of David. Just look at a deep sleep from the Lord falling upon his enemies. So much so he's able to literally walk into the camp, go to Saul, get his spear, get his water jug. And in this case as well, of course, there are two things that are wrong. Number one is what you've pointed out, going to the enemies to hide with them. But also, he lied point blank. But yet all of these things are playing a part in the bigger story of what God is about to do. This is all the story that led on to chapter 30, when he would then go on to actually deal a massive blow against the Amalekites, the same Amalekites that Saul was supposed to have wiped out. Now they are so strong that they could still come and raid, and he would go on to almost finish the job. But of course, we were told 400 people escaped. So the Amalekites will continue to rear their head in the story down through the pages. But yeah, I understand that it's looked unreasonable, but again, I feel very much that we never can tell what would have happened if indeed he went. But he's playing the man along, and it's a tactic. That's how I read it anyways.
Okay.
Because he knows what he's doing. That's why he will come and lie and say, I've gone to fight such and such. And he has made sure he killed all those people so that there will even be no witness to come and say to the king, he came to raid at our place, so I'm the one that came out to escape. He wiped them off, so much so that there is nobody to live to poke holes in his story and the narrative that he's building. But yeah, I think it's very strategic, what he's doing.
If indeed it is strategic, yeah. Do you think that his men understood what he's doing? Because they were ready to stone him. So there must have been some sort of dissension within his camp or within his band.
That's possible.
Because obviously they went out to fight against their brothers. They thought that they were refused. They came back home. Their women had been raided. It wasn't David's fault. So why did they choose? Why were they planning to stone him? We don't know.
We don't know.
Yeah.
Yep. Grief, but we don't know.
Yeah, they did say they were aggrieved. So. Okay.
Chapter 28. What stood out to me there is verse 18, because there we saw the real reason why Saul has descended to this low that he has gone. It just kept going lower and lower, digging himself deeper and deeper to the point of consulting a necromancer. And we're told the reason is simply because you did not obey the voice of the Lord and did not carry out his fierce wrath against Amalek. Therefore, the Lord has done this thing to you this day. It all comes down to just a simple instruction that was violated. And then that just led down a rabbit hole of more disobediences. And it almost became the story of every decision taking Saul deeper and deeper into the pits that he's digging for himself by his repeated cycles of disobediences. Just pray, may we be obedient to the instructions of the Lord.
Amen.
Amen. Or anything else stood out to you in that chapter?
I felt sorry for Saul. Especially when he said he was afraid and his heart trembled greatly. And then he went to the necromancer and he was still terrified. So much that he wouldn't eat. And then, because why would you eat when you've been told that you'll be killed with your sons?
The next day.
The next day, it's not even many months away, but imminent death. As much as I felt sorry for Saul, I was also intrigued by Samuel's response that he indeed gave him an answer and he didn't leave him hanging. Yeah, I think that was a bit of kindness, actually. In the kindness comes the sorrow in that him and his sons would die.
Yeah. And it needs to be said because, it's quite a troubling narrative that, what exactly is going on here? From where is the person that appeared in that instance actually Samuel? And, what's going on? And there are many unknowns to the story. But suffice it to say that God granted that indeed someone or something appeared in the form of Samuel and gave Saul the judgment that he needed to hear. If God had chosen not to speak to him and chosen not to give him any dreams or revelations and chosen not to speak through any prophet to him, he could as well choose not to let him get any message through any means that he explored. But again, just to let him know, see how far you are falling. But yeah, I will tell you what you want to know. And that's the fact that because of your disobedience, tomorrow, you and your sons shall die. Chapter 29, anything stood out to you?
Yes, earlier I was referring to chapter 29, but said 28.
Okay.
This is where David and his men were rejected.
Yes.
And yeah, I've shared that part of what I thought.
Okay. I like that the song that started Saul's jealousy apparently has become so popular that even the Philistines know the song because it was trending. Must have topped the charts for many weeks in a row. It's not this David of whom they sing to one another in dances. Saul has struck down his thousands and David is 10,000s. So let's be careful the kind of songs we compose. Amongst other things, yeah. And finally, in chapter 30, a very popular story, but it's good to now see the context that led to that story. Many times I've read 1 Samuel 30, I know the story. What I am not that familiar with is the context that led on to it. But yeah, understanding that context makes the story even more, adds a layer of richness to it than before. What stood out to me personally is the kind of attitude that David even legalized in this case. So when they've recovered all and they came back, those that were too tired to go with them were going to be denied by those that actually went ahead to fight and brought back the spoils. But David said no. Everyone has played a part. Even if their own part is just watching over our baggage, it's still an important part. And therefore, everyone will take from the share alike. So it says in verse 24, for as his share is, who goes down into the battle, so shall his share be, who stays by the baggage. They shall share alike. And he made it a statute and a rule from Israel from that day forward to this day. So David is a great example in leadership to study, both from his successes and his failures, from his lies and his truths. There are just so many things to observe, and his military tactics actually. But in this case, this ethical principle is what spotlighting. Yeah. Any thoughts?
What stood out to me in 30 is verse 11. How David showed kindness to the Egyptian servant. Because if he had not done that, they wouldn't have found the band.
Indeed.
And then brought back their families. So in spite of the fact that this guy would have, if he was not unwell, would have been part of the people who had participated in the raid, so David's judgment wasn't clouded by the boys' participation or link to the Amalekites. But he revived him with food and then simply asked, to whom do you belong? So at the time where David was giving him food, he didn't even know he was part of the Amalekites. But a person who is grieving, whose wives has been taken, whose men are choosing to are planning to stone him, still had that capacity to show kindness to a boy who was faint for food. And that kindness paid well.
Indeed.
That's quite instructive.
Absolutely. And that offers yet another contrast in leadership, because the boy would then beg and say, swear to me by God that you will not kill me or deliver me into the hands of my master. In other words, he doesn't want to continue to serve that kind of a master that will leave him for dead simply because he was sick. So again, we see that comparison between a wicked master and a compassionate leader that would go out of their way to show love and compassion to the unexpecting. And that's day 90, 3 months in, and we cross the page on day 91 as we continue in the journey, slow and steady. We bring the book of 1 Samuel to a close tomorrow, and then we cross over as well into 2 Samuel chapter 1. And then top it up with Psalm 18. But till then, just remember,
you're not alone
today.
God bless you.